Live, not from New York. It's the Get Clear Show. And now, here's Laura.
Hello, and welcome to the Get Clear Show. I'm Laura Wing, and I'm your host. We have a great show for you lined up today, something that's going to be incredibly informative. I have with me today Mr. Chris Taylor, who is a local insurance agent, and Chris is going to be talking to us today all about insurance. He's really going to be educating us and teaching us about the world of insurance. What do we need? What laws are in place regarding insurance? How do you file a claim? Just simple things that people need to know that I don't think any of us learned in high school, did we, Chris?
No,
there was no how to find insurance when we were in high school. Well, Chris, welcome to today's show. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come in and have a conversation.
Well, it's going to be fantastic, and I'm really excited to get to talk to you today. But before we get started, I need to do a little bit of housekeeping. We have a wonderful sponsor for today's show. This company is very, very important to me. They're near and dear to my heart. And I want to talk to you for just a moment about Rose Roofing and Contracting. Rose Roofing and Contracting is based out of Atchison, Kansas. We also have an office in St. Joseph, Missouri. So Rose Roofing does roofs. They do flat roofs, commercial roofs, residential roofs. Right now we've had a lot of rain, so if your roof is leaking, these are the people to call and get that taken care of. They also have a tree service that they provide, so if you have trees that need to be taken down, you can certainly get a hold of Rose and they'll take care of that. They do siding and windows, just a whole host of things, but you won't find a better contracting company in this area. So get a hold of Rose at 913-426-6919. Chris, again, I'm so excited that you're here. So tell us a little about yourself. I want everybody to get to know you a little bit and find out how you got into insurance.
Well, I've had this conversation a few times this past week, just talking to other people. Never thought I'd ever get in the insurance world. I'm actually born and raised here in Atchison, Kansas, and went to Atchison High School. After that, went to K-State. Graduated from there, and then I embarked on a professional baseball career, and I was an umpire in the minor leagues for 10 years.
Oh my!
So my dreams and hopes and goals were to be a major league umpire, and when that didn't happen, I met a guy, and he was in the insurance business, and we had a conversation. And here, starting in June of 2001, I've been in the insurance business. Never in my wildest dreams thought I would ever do this, but I will never do anything else. It's a great industry. I enjoy helping people, but it also, on a personal side, it gives me the freedom to go to my kids' track meet, which was canceled yesterday because of the weather.
Yeah, lots of rain.
Yeah, exactly. Or go to a volleyball match or whatever. So I've really, really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I've gotten to meet and know a lot of good people, and basically I've gotten to help a lot of people. So you talked about Rose Roofing, with the spring season that we're going into, it is actually imperative that we have the proper insurance coverage in force when it's wind and hail season. So this is our busy season right now. So I'm here to help people, and that's what I enjoy.
Well, let's touch on a couple of ways that you can help people. I want to tell you that many years ago, in a past lifetime, I was also an insurance agent. And one of the things that I loved so much about that was exactly what you said, getting to help people, but more importantly, getting to educate people. Mm-hmm. We mentioned at the start of the show that I don't think there was a class in high school or even in college that said how to pick out insurance 101. And so people would come to me, as I'm sure they do to you, and they would bring their policies whenever they had a claim or something like that. And they'd, for the first time, start to question what it was that they had. And so let's go through some of those things and maybe start helping people understand why they need insurance and what it is that they actually are purchasing when they get insurance. So if it's all right with you, I think maybe a great place to start might be with homeowners or renters insurance. Let's talk about property insurance right now.
Absolutely. The whole premise behind insurance is you basically give me pennies, and then when you have something happen, we give you back dollars. So it's spreading out that risk so that you're not taking it on all yourself. So when it comes to homeowners and renters coverage, you know, we're covering, with the homeowners, we're covering the actual structure itself. So basically whatever happens within those four walls, or whatever happens externally to it, you know, that's what we're going to pay for and we're going to provide. So what comes along with that is just as important as anything is the liability aspect of it on the renter side of it. So if you have a pool or a trampoline, or even somebody's walking through their yard and they get hurt and they decide to sue you, you make the phone call to me, I turn in the claim, and we pick up all the defense. You don't have to hire an attorney. You don't have to do anything, and we will defend you and pay for that and take care of all that. So then we have to decide, were you negligent? If you weren't negligent, then there's no liability claim. If you were, then we'll go ahead and protect you and take care of that. So we're going to go through all that process up front as defending it and hiring the attorneys. And you brought up a great point about having renter's insurance. A lot of people choose not to do that. They say, I don't have anything. You think of the 20-year-old bachelor that's just, you know, working wherever he's working. He's got a couch and a TV, and he's never there, and he doesn't really care. And that's okay. That's fine. Maybe he doesn't have $20,000 worth of stuff. But the biggest key and piece to that coverage is that liability. Because if somebody does decide to sue him, we step in and take care of the attorneys, take care of that defense and all that. So that's one of the biggest pieces that's missed when we're talking about renter's insurance.
Right. And I think I want to touch on something, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Too many times when people are thinking about renter's insurance and liability, they think that falls on their landlord only, that they have no liability. But you know, they do. They really do. You want to talk about that for just a minute?
Absolutely. That's an awesome point. And what we're finding out a lot more now, you see these big apartment complexes popping up all over the place, and they require renter's insurance. You have to have renter's insurance, and they require that you put their name on it as an additional insured, so that then they're covered also. So back to your original point, if it's a rental house, the landlord basically has a policy to cover the structure. He does not have any contents coverage for you, and he absolutely does not have any liability coverage for you. He is protecting his interest.
Right. So if in that dwelling I decide to run a cord from my television to my bedroom for some reason, and I have friends over and they trip over that cord, the landlord's not responsible for that. That's something that I would then be responsible for, and that's what my insurance will help me with. Is that right?
Exactly right. And what if you use that cord, that extension cord, for 30 days, you go to work, it's still on, and it burns the whole house down?
Yeah.
What do we do then? That is where your liability coverage comes in and picks that up. Then you were negligent in using that extension cord, so your liability coverage is going to come in and take care of paying for that house. So those are a good example.
So important. And so you mentioned that a lot of people maybe they don't have $20,000 worth of content, but I think most people would be very surprised at how much they really do have. My husband and I have rebuilt our lives from scratch 4 times. You know, we moved out of the country, and then we came back and we had nothing, no furniture, nothing. And we thought, we don't have very much, but you know, it doesn't take very long to have to accumulate those things. And you realize, boy, if we lose that again, that costs us a lot of money. So if somebody were to come in and say rob us, or there was a fire and our contents disappeared, it takes a lot of money to replace those things. And I think sometimes don't even realize, wow, those little items sure add up quickly.
And you're spot on, because everybody thinks about the TV, the couch, the bed, and maybe their clothes. But what people don't realize in the event of a fire or a tornado, it is the spices in the spice rack. It's the toilet paper. It's the paper towels. It's the laundry soap. It's the half a gallon of milk. It is every single thing that you have in your house. So the way I describe it is, think of the time you woke up this morning and the time you go to bed at night. Every single thing you touch in your house is covered under your contents, from a blow dryer to a curling iron to an alarm clock to the butter in the refrigerator and the milk and the cereal and the bowl and the spoon. and all that stuff, the shoes, every single thing is covered. So you are spot on to where you say it adds up extremely, extremely fast.
Yeah, it really does. And you're right. We only think about the big things. And what I like about the concept of renter's insurance is, and you mentioned it at the beginning, it's pennies for dollars. That's such a small amount to pay for such great peace of mind. And anything can happen, right?
Yes, it can. And it does. And it happens when you least expect it. So,
absolutely.
That's what we want to do is be there. I've had a lot of people when they come in to pay the premium, obviously everybody hates to pay premium and they don't like it, but I've never, ever, ever had anybody turn down a check when we're handing it back to them.
They all want, right. They all want to be able to file a claim when it's time.
And they're happy that they have that in force and that we're there to help them.
Let's talk about how somebody can get homeowners or renters insurance. How can they insure the property that they're living in?
There's a process. Basically, we collect as much information on the house as we can. Year built, square foot, how is it constructed? Siding, is it brick? Is it vinyl siding? How old's the roof? How many bathrooms? Is it a full basement, half basement? Is the basement finished? So basically, that gives us a value. There's 3 values to a house. There's what the realtor says you can buy and sell it for. There's what the tax man says he's going to tax you on it. And then there's what the contractor says that you can rebuild it for. We only care about that last number is the reconstruction cost. We don't really care what the market value is because you can take a house here in Atchison, you can put it in Kansas City, or you can put it in California, and it can be the exact identical house, but that market value is completely different.
Right.
Likewise, each one of those jurisdictions are going to have different taxing parameters. So those 2 numbers we don't really care about, but it's for this local, for here in Atchison, it's what the Rose Roofing says it's going to come in and rebuild your house. That's the only number we care about. So basically, we start with that number, use it as a reconstruction cost, and then we come up with a premium based on your specific house.
Chris, let me ask you something. If, let's say, a tornado did come through here and wiped out my house, and I walked into your office and, Chris, I have a claim, and I could do that because you're actually my insurance provider.
Yes.
I have a claim. My house has been wiped out by a tornado. Do I just go hang out at some hotel and you rebuild my house? What happens then?
Yes, and yes, and no, and no. It kind of depends. In your policy, you have what's called loss of use. So if you have to incur an expense above and beyond what your normal expenses are, so that would be living in a hotel, or that would be finding another house to rent while we're taking care of your claim, we will pay for any of those normal living expenses above and beyond. So most of us have a mortgage. So let's just say hypothetically your mortgage is $500 a month. You're still going to pay your mortgage even though the house is destroyed because you have an obligation to the bank. But then you're going to have either that hotel expense or you're going to have a rental house expense. That's what we come in and pick up. So while we're settling the claim, you have to have some place to live and we take care of that. So then we work on the claim. For your house, usually those claims get settled pretty quickly because here again, if it's a tornado and there's nothing left of the house, it's completely gone, then we're going to start figuring out we'll go to the policy, how much coverage did we have, all these other things, and then we're going to start writing you checks to take care of the house. Your contents are a little bit different. We obviously have no idea what you own inside your house. When we were talking about that renter's coverage, you have $20,000 worth of stuff. Well, on the homeowner's coverage, you have coverage for your contents also, and we have no idea. That's where it gets a little bit more cumbersome because you have to actually go through and inventory your stuff. And if the first thing I would have said to you, Laura, when you walked in my office, I would have said, hey, wait, be careful. This is a process. It's frustrating. You're going to get upset. You're going to get mad. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to say, why this, why that? Sometimes when adjusters and customers talk, they don't speak the same language. So I'm kind of that middleman. Laura, here's what he's saying. The adjuster, hey, here's what's going on. So it's a process. We have to get through it. It's emotional for you. And I explain to people, hey, for me, it's more of a business transaction. For the adjuster, it's more of a business transaction. So we don't have that emotion. Now we have empathy and we want to be there for you and help you, but it's more of a black and white transaction for us. For you, it's the complete opposite. You don't know about the black and white. You don't care. You're just thinking, I lost my home.
And I think that's why having this conversation is so important now, so that people understand, God forbid something like that should happen. There's going to be a process.
It is.
There's going to be a process. And it's not that you're not going to take care of them the way they need to be taken care of, but there's laws in place, there's just things that have to be, you can't just arbitrarily write somebody a check and say, okay, here's your $100,000 to replace everything, or whatever the price point they think is. There's process that has to be put in place first.
Exactly. And that process can be long and drawn out, and it can be frustrating for you. So I try to basically, for lack of a better term, I try to be the rodeo cowboy between you and the adjuster and the insurance company and say, okay, we've got to get this, we've got to work through it, and this is the way that it works. But how can we make that as easy for you as possible? Because it is a horrible, horrible situation. And I've had customers that have total loss fires, and it is a process. And so I'm there to hold their hand, to help them and work through the process. And then I'm there if on the claim side, if they need any information from me, I can be a conduit to get from you and help you fax stuff in, scan it and email it in, whatever. So, I play that middleman and try to help both sides of it so that we can get it resolved to where everybody, nobody's ever happy about it.
Of course not. Nobody wants to file a claim.
Exactly. So we just have to try to get through the process and get you back to whole and back to where you were before it happened.
Right. Well, Chris, let's move on. If we're still talking about property, let's talk about auto insurance. We know that, at least in the state of Kansas, and I imagine many other states, that's the law. If you want to operate a motor vehicle, you must be insured at least for liability. So let's talk about the difference between full coverage, liability, and one thing I really would like for you to talk about. I notice on my cards, and I know what these numbers mean, but so many people would say to me, what are these numbers? There's something that says 50, 100, 50, or it might say 25, 50, 25. Those numbers could be different, but what do those numbers mean? What is liability, and what is full coverage? Let's talk about that. Okay.
Liability, that 50, 100, 50, basically what that means is there's $50,000 of coverage. Let's step back. You have a liability claim, you run a stop sign, you hit a carload of 4 people, okay? We're going to pay up to $50,000 per person for any bodily injury that you caused, okay? That second number is 100, so we won't pay any more than $100,000 total for the whole accident per person, or per accident, based on that claim, right? So the first 50 is per person, the second 50 is second 100 is for the whole accident. So that first 50 is wrapped up inside of that 100. So a lot of people don't understand that, and liability claims when we're talking about autos tend to be a little bit bigger because people get hurt or property gets damaged.
Right.
And property damage is that very last number. So that last 50 is what we'll pay to fix that other car or those other 2 cars that you fixed or you ran into.
And let's talk about that also. So that last number, if I were to hit a $60,000 car, you're only going to, and total it, you're only going to pay up to $50,000. That other $10,000 I'm responsible for. Correct?
Exactly.
Or if I drive through somebody's fence, that's covered in that $50,000 as well. That fence will be taken care of.
Correct.
I'm using that as an example.
Anything that you cause, any property damage you cause is going to be covered in that bucket of $50,000. So let's think about that just for a second. Most people, when you go car shopping, what are the numbers you see these days? They're pretty big.
Oh, they are. It's, it used to be you could find a very nice car for around 10,000, and we keep seeing those numbers climb. I just bought a new car and I wish it was 10,000,
Exactly. And so you can't really, you're talking starting around 25 to 30,000 easy, right, for
on average.
Average. And then think if you run a Cadillac off the road, it's $50,000 or $60,000. So right, that's one thing that we really, really talk to people about. And when we educate them on those 3 numbers, we like to start at 100, 300, 100, because that gets your liability limits up. That last 100 is going to cover most cars or a couple cars if it's a 2-car accident or 3-car accident. So getting those numbers up a little bit higher protects you so much more.
It does. And really what it does, it keeps you from being sued.
Right? That's the whole thing. That's it. Most people are going to, unless we have a fatality or somebody ending up in the hospital for 6 months or something like that, most of these coverages are going to protect that. If we've got that other situation, we probably need to get into and be thinking about an umbrella protection for everybody, but we can talk about that in a minute. But it's just so key that if you look at, and we'll talk about comp and collision also, but on the liability side of it, it is the cheapest part of the policy. Okay, so we want to have high liability limits, and there is a premium that's associated with that. But what do? We offset that with higher deductibles. So a lot of people like those lower deductibles, but if we take a little bit higher deductible, we can have more coverage on the liability side. Right,
and it keeps the cost down.
It does, absolutely, absolutely. I personally, this is
so
Chris Taylor.
That we're talking about liability, but a lot of times when people go and they finance their vehicle, they have to have full coverage. Can you explain the difference between full coverage and liability?
Yes, and I was going into that as far as my point is.
I jumped the gun, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. No, it's perfect. I was going to say, I believe in high liability limits and high deductibles, because what are you guaranteed to pay? You're guaranteed to pay that monthly premium. You're never guaranteed to pay the deductible. The only time you pay that's if you have a claim. So on to how do those deductibles apply and what do they mean? So if you have comprehensive coverage or collision coverage on your car, that's where we apply a deductible. And those are the type of coverages that you're talking about that when you get a loan on a car, they require you to have, because then if you get into a wreck, we're going to pay for your car to fix it. And that's what's going to protect
you. And let's make that clear. You're going to pay to have my car fixed.
Correct.
Replaced, depending on whether it was a total loss or not. But you are not going to fix my car.
Great point. Fantastic point. A lot of people say, hey, I want my car fixed. Where do I go? Or even the house, the roof. You know, our obligation is not to actually fix it or to find somebody to fix it. Our obligation is to pay for it. So you as the car owner or the homeowner, it is your privilege to take your vehicle where you want to take it and get it fixed. It's your privilege to hire the contractor that you want to hire. And then you get the estimate, turn it in, and then we actually write the check and pay for it. So,
or replace my vehicle. So if it's a total loss, you're going to give me a check for the value of the vehicle at the time of loss, correct?
Correct.
And I'm going to take that check and I'm going to go pick out my own car. You're not going to go buy a car for me.
We are not going to eBay and finding the same like, kind, and quality car and buying it for you. Absolutely not. No, you get to do that. You get to pick out whatever you want. If you want a pink Cadillac, go get it.
We have choices. See, that's really nice. I like that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so some kid, 16 years old, gets his first car. He or she gets their first car, and now mom and dad say you have to get insurance. How does that work for that brand new driver? How do they go about? Because like I said, there's no class for this at school. So suddenly they said, but I don't know how to get insurance. It's not a difficult process, really, is it? Can you explain?
It really isn't. With the systems we have in place now, you know, there's so much information available out there. If that person calls in and if they're already insured with us and it's the 16-year-old kid and saying, hey, my dad told me to call you because he's wanting to teach the kid, you know, some responsibility and some real world skills. Okay, we'll know their address and all that stuff. Then we just start plugging in numbers. What kind of car is it? How many miles are on it? How long have you owned it? You know, how many miles a year are you going to drive? And then after that, we start plugging in discounts. For that 16-year-old kid, good grades is key. If they have a 3.0 or higher with our company, it's almost a 25% discount.
That is so encouraging. That is so incredibly encouraging, because I think there's so much value and lesson in that. So that's great.
Another discount we have is what we call Drive Safe and Save. Basically, we put a fob in the car. There's an app on your smartphone, and those two talk to one another and relay that information onto the company, and then we know how that person's driving. So it's a discount, guaranteed to be a discount. It's also a great thing for a dad or a mom, because then they can see how that 16-year-old drives, and they've got the proof in the pudding right there. So
you were doing 90 all day yesterday. What's up with that?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
So,
okay, so we've talked about homeowners, renters. We've talked about auto. What about life? Do you handle life and health insurance?
Life insurance we do. We have some health insurance products as far as like disability and hospitalization and that type of thing, but not your individual medical, you know, health care that's going through the system.
Because I don't want to forget, Chris, can we talk about that disability policy? Do you also carry long-term care?
We do both of those on the health.
Talk about that, because I think this is my opinion, but I think those are the forgotten insurances. Those are the forgotten things that people seriously never think about until they need it. And then they really regret not having gotten it. So can we talk about that?
Yes, those two, especially well, not especially, they're all very important, but the disability income, the way I describe it is if you had a money machine in your basement, kicking out $35,000 or $40,000 a year or $50,000 a year, would you go down to the basement and insure that machine? Would you want it insured to make sure that money keeps coming? And that answer is obviously yes. Well, guess what, Mr. Customer, you're the money machine. So if something happens to you and your income stops today, how do we protect you and your family? Who's going to pay for the car? Who's going to pay for the house? All that stuff, because you can't work. So in a nutshell, that's about the best description I can give of disability. And
I know that a lot of people say, oh, I have a disability policy through my work, but that may not be, we're talking about really two different things here. Or they think, well, I can always get disability, right? Like government assistance type disability, but that's not necessarily going to be enough. And it may take years for that to pay out versus having a policy through a company like yours.
Right. Two things on that. A lot of times through work, it's a short-term disability. So they're going to be like, hey, I'm going to be off for 7 days. Okay, so after the first day, we're going to pay you for 7 days, and then I'm back to work. Ours is traditionally more a long-term disability that, hey, I'm done. I can't work for 2 or 3 or 4 years, or I can't work forever. So we're looking more at the big picture and long haul. How do we protect that paycheck and take care of that? Also, you mentioned, hey, I'm going to get some help through Social Security. Social Security, you have a 2-year wait. And then it's something like 60% of all Social Security disability claims are denied.
On the first try.
Exactly, you're going through that process. So it can be another 12 to 18
years.
months.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So if you don't have a paycheck for 4 years, how are you going to?
I don't know about you, but I can't go 4 years without a paycheck.
Exactly. And the rate of disability is higher than it is for death. So if you die, that gets us back to the original question on life insurance. I get a lot of people that ask me what type of life insurance is the best. And my answer to them is, I don't really care. The only type that's any good is the type that's in force when you die. So let's figure out what the purpose of the insurance is. Why do you need it? And then we can build a plan based on that. So if it's just to protect your mortgage, like we talked about earlier, protecting the home, if we just want to protect the mortgage and you die and you want to make sure that the house is paid for, we look at a 20-year term policy. If it's for funeral expenses, then obviously we have to have something permanent in place, something along the whole life lines or a universal life policy. So then we look at maybe a smaller face amount that's going to pay for the funeral. So here again, we want to know why. What's your intentions for the policy? What do you need it for? And then what is your exposure? What are we trying to protect?
Okay, so you're really looking at everybody as an individual, because I don't think you can just say, oh, we're going to give everybody a $10,000 policy and that's good enough. For some people, that's not a drop in the bucket. For others, it might be good enough, right?
Exactly. We want to have that personal conversation with you to find out what your personal situation is, because anybody can listen to the radio or put in a tape that's cookie cutter for everybody. It's just a one-stop shop. This is what you should do. Never buy this, never buy that, always buy this, or, buy my book and I become a millionaire and I don't know anything about insurance, but I can give you advice type of thing. But if you actually want to have something personally prepared for you to your specific needs, you need to go see your insurance professional. That's where you're going to say, hey, this is what I need. We have a program that we go through on the computer. We'll put in your mortgage. We'll put in if there's any student loans. We'll put in if there's any car loans or credit card debt. Do you want to leave a legacy? That's one thing we didn't talk about. Do you want to leave money to the church? Do you want to leave money for your kids? Do you want to leave money to your own?
You have an option as a consumer to decide who's going to be the beneficiary of that policy upon your death, correct?
Correct. Whoever owns the policy controls the beneficiary. So in my situation, I own the policies on my children. So once they become older, I'll give those policies to them and then they can decide who the beneficiary is. But right now, yes, whoever the owner is gets to decide who the beneficiary is, and those beneficiaries can be changed at any time. So if you do have somebody that predeceases you, then you can make that adjustment and make that change to where you can move move beneficiaries around, and you can
And
give
it's
it away
not very
exactly how you
difficult,
want.
is it? It's not, people sometimes think, oh, it must be really hard to do that, but it's really as simple as signing a form.
It's very easy, and it's even easier than that. With our technology now, our form is electronic. You come in, sign it, I push a button, it gets sent off to the
And it's
company.
done.
Boom, done. We don't have to
Let's
mail it.
talk about where people can find you. If it's all right with you, Chris, I'd like to pull up your website. Can we do
Sure,
that?
absolutely.
Let's go ahead and pull that up, and we'll share that with everybody. So we're looking here at your website. What are we seeing?
Well, that's Chris Taylor State Farm Insurance Agency, and we are located here in Atchison, Kansas, at the corner of 17th and Main. If you know where Murphy's Quick Stop is, we're catty corner from that, right there, one of the busiest intersections in town. So hopefully you've driven by and seen all the signs and all that stuff. But we try to make things as easy as we can for people, as far as, like you talked about, getting them a quote, filing claims, all that stuff. So we've got always, if we're not open, because it's after hours, you can get a hold of us 24 hours, 7 days a week. We forward the phones, and then it goes into a call center, and State Farm will pick it up, and it doesn't matter. They'll take a payment. They'll file a claim. They'll even bind new coverage on a new car if you bought one over the weekend at the car lot. So.
Wow, that's incredible. So I noticed down here, if I don't have time or I don't want to drive down there, I could just go ahead and submit a question to you right here. I could put a message here and send it to you, and somebody from your agency will get back.
Absolutely. I just had one of those this morning. He was inquiring about a policy that he had, and I got 2 or 3 yesterday. So here again, our goal and State Farm's goal is to make it as easy for you, because nobody likes to deal with insurance, we know that, we understand that. So our goal is to make it as easy and simple for you and be as convenient. And like I said, I come to you if you need me to. So I'll meet you at your house, I'll meet you at your work, whatever. So anything to make it easy. Okay,
so what we're looking at is ChrisTaylorInsurance.com. Is that right?
Yes, that is. ChrisTaylorInsurance.com is the website, and our email is ct@ChrisTaylorInsurance.com. So very, very easy to get a hold of us.
All right. Well, I think this has been incredibly informative. I really do. Is there anything, Chris, that you would like for us to know that maybe we didn't cover today that you think is very important information for people to have?
One thing I tell people, it can be intimidating, but what I tell people when I'm meeting with them in my office is I have no expectation that you're going to remember anything that we talked about 5 minutes after you walk away. But while you're here, I want you to make an informed decision. I want you to know what you have. So if you do have questions, talk to your insurance professional. Another thing I get all the time is, oh, I'm sorry to bother you, or I don't want to take up your time. Yes, call. Yes, bother me. Yes, take up my time, because this is what we do every day. And I want you to understand what you have, and I want you to know how it works. Like I said, I don't expect every time there's a claim that you're going to say, oh, I know how this goes, and this goes. No, I don't have that expectation. But we want to talk about it. We want to be informed, and we want to try to help you and make sure that you can make good decisions.
There is one other thing that I want to ask you. I think, you mentioned earlier that insurance wasn't your life goal. You weren't going to become an insurance agent. It just sort of happened. What about somebody who is watching this video today and listening to you and saying, wow, that there really is some interesting stuff about insurance. How could somebody go about, at least in the state of Kansas, every state is different, but how could they go about getting into insurance and selling insurance?
Lots of different ways. Talk to your agent, whoever your agent is. They will have people that they can get you in contact with. You can go to just statefarm.com and click on careers. So you could go to your company's website and click on that. Those are probably the 2 easiest ways. If you know somebody that works for the company that you want to get into, or here again, hitting the research. When I'm advertising for people that work for me, I've got a ad on Career Plug or Indeed. So you can hit all those job search engines. And
I know in Kansas there is a licensing process that somebody has to go through. You have to pass some tests at the state level in order to be allowed to sell insurance to people.
Correct.
How difficult are those tests? From my experience, I didn't feel they were too difficult. But what do you think about that?
You know, I'd like, if you have to step back and take it for what it is and study the material and pass the test. And no, they're not extremely difficult. But for most people, it's stuff that they've never heard about or talked about. So
and that's just it. It's a whole new language. It's a whole new way of understanding something.
It is. It's very foreign to them. So me personally, I learn better in a classroom. So I went to a class, a 3-day class on Monday, Tuesday, and half day on Wednesday. And then I took my exam on Friday. So I crammed it all in 1 week and did it. But I've had people that work for me that self-study. They just buy the material and do it on their own. You can do a webinar like you and I are doing where it's an actual class, but it's online, or you can do an online study that's at your own pace to where there's not an instructor there. So the key to it is knowing how you learn best and what setting is good for you, and then working on it that way and then taking the exam. So it's just like anything. You have to study the material, get versed at it.
What I think is nice about that, Chris, is that I can go to any insurance agency and hopefully everybody's adhering to the same rules of the game.
Exactly.
Right? So for the consumer, there's some protection there. In knowing that this is a licensed insurance agency, and I know that there are things that they cannot do to me, because if they do, they're going to lose their license. So I know that I'm going to be protected because of that.
Yeah, you're getting that protection through the Kansas Insurance Department. And if something isn't going the way that you like it, they are a resource for you to file a complaint. That's, here again, the last avenue that we want to take. But here again, that is protection for the consumer on the the second or third line of defense. But the first one is, yes, we have to be licensed. I have to go through 12 hours of continuing education for my property and casualty license every 2 years, and I have to do the same thing for my life license every 2 years. So I have to do continuing education to keep up with stuff. So
right, and keep up with ethics. I remember going to those ethics classes.
Have to have
it. Important. I mean, we can laugh about that, but they really are very important, I think.
Very important. The insurance industry has some bad apples, and they've given our industry a bad name. So we want to do what's right by the customer and treat them right so that we don't ever get in that situation. So if we always put the customer
first. Chris, too, one thing I do want to say is you work for a reputable company. This isn't a fly-by-night organization. This is not one of those no-name insurance companies. And so there's that extra layer of protection just there because, for example, State Farm does not want to have a bad reputation. So they're going to make sure that everybody is doing things correctly. They're doing things the way they are supposed to be done.
Absolutely. There's a reason that State Farm's been in business for as long as it has, starting in 1922, coming up on a 100-year anniversary. And there's a reason that State Farm has the most auto policies and homeowners and life policies in force today. So when you're number one, you want to stay number one, and you want to do what's right. And that's what is drilled into our head from day one is customer service, take care of the customer, and that's our number one priority.
That's fantastic. Chris, you've done a great job of covering all of this material. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate the opportunity.
I think we're going to go ahead and let our audience go. We've given them a lot of information. Again, if you would like to get a hold of Chris, you can do that. We'll put the number up for you, Chris, at the end of this production so people can have that.
Awesome.
You've been watching the Get Clear Show. And as always, thank you for watching and have a great day.
Thanks, Laura.